Iowa's News Now Sports brings you black and gold glory. Your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
That was probably the hardest part about the game, trying to get through that mosh pit. I'm not going to lie. I might have a slight concussion from the amount of times I got hit on the head. Just kidding, don't tell the trainers. But yeah, it was fun. And that's the stuff, like I said, it's number 3 versus number 4. That's the stuff you love.
Your secret's safe with us, Tyler. I'm Jett Beachum. He's Hawkeye Nation's Rob Howe. This is Eye on the Hawks, and we've got quite a football game to talk about. Iowa found itself in major trouble early in the second quarter, trailing 4th-ranked Penn State 17-3, with the offense failing to generate a drive longer than 30 yards. But from that point on, the Hawks scratched and clawed, outscoring Penn State 20-3 the rest of the way to pull off a triumphant win that sparked a field storming. Iowa used everything it had to turn the tide, a patient offense which set up its superstar punter, which set up its suffocating defense. When the Hawks talk about complementary football, this is what they mean.
The fans can think whatever they want about the style of whether we play, but the coaches, they know what they're doing, and they know the strategy that we're trying to implement. And, like you said, complementary football, that's what's winning us games right now. And so I just couldn't be more proud of my teammates for being able to go out there and execute what the coaches were wanting us to do out there.
We had adversity in the first half, came in the locker room, talked over the game plan, discussed, changed a few things, came back out and was ready for war.
Now that was Matt Hankins, Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week and the Bronco Nagurski National Player of the Week. Rob, is Saturday's result proof that Iowa can beat the big guys with this style of play?
Yeah, and it's funny, Jett, because it's 23 years now that we've seen this style of play. It's not like this came out of the blue. Iowa plays complementary football. It uses what it has. It leans on its strengths. And we've seen that from the beginning this year, that Iowa's going to not take chances on offense and allow its defense to make plays and then play the field position game with its special teams. It's got one of the best punt returners in the country. It's got arguably the best punter in the country, one of the country's best defenses. Lean on that, and let the and I think we've seen the offense evolve. I think it is developing.
Now it's clear something special is brewing with this Hawkeye squad, with the win over Penn State serving as our best evidence yet. This group has a special bond. We see the result on the field, but what happens on the sidelines and away from the field is a major part of what drives the wins.
I mean, honestly, today, sitting on the sideline, I was so emotionally drained and just screaming for the defense so much. I truly almost teared up a little bit out there, just because we all care about each other so much. It's the beauty of our team.
We're only halfway home, but they're off to a really good start there. And, I've never seen really good teams that don't feel that way. They're usually, no matter what sport, even, NBA basketball or whatever. I mean, when you get that going, you got a shot. And these guys do. That's genuine.
Like Kirk said, the great teams have to have this kind of bond. And according to him, this team has it. It's a lot easier to have that bond when you're winning. But Rob, do you agree that it does seem genuine?
Yeah, I think so, Jett. And we talked about how hard last year was during the pandemic, how hard it was to get through that. I think when these guys got together and had to go through that together, and then you also talked about what happened last summer with the racial bias incident, I think all of these things have worked to bring these guys together. And you could say that those type of things can tear teams apart, but I think the continuity and the understanding and the better bonds that are made in the locker room have allowed this program to take a step to another level.
Now, the expectation was that Kinnick would be rocking Saturday afternoon, and those expectations were met. The stadium was shaking when Sean Clifford threw an interception on Penn State's first drive, and it was even louder when Iowa pulled off the comeback in the second half. The fans played a major role in the win, especially helping in the form of false starts. And from Kirk Ferentz to Nico Reganey, the crowd received rave reviews from the Hawks.
Our fans did a great job. They were into the game. We knew they'd be ready to go at start, and they were more ready than we were. I just wanted to make sure our team understood, that they can't play the game for us. So they did a great job, and they were there all the way through. And what a great scene at the end.
I mean, the fans today were on another level. I've never seen anything like it. It was rowdy, and I will truly never forget what today was like. It was mind-blowing.
It was a remarkable environment from before kickoff all the way through. Now, Rob, where does this rank among the best crowds that you've seen covering Kinnick?
It's got to be right up there, Jett. And I thought it was really loud for the Indiana game, and I thought it gave Michael Penix Jr. problems.
Yeah.
And then you saw the other day with the 3 straight false starts, that was directly related to the crowd and the crowd noise. So, you know, people can say, you know, it doesn't really impact when you get between the lines, but I don't see that as the case. I think it's a huge home field advantage. And since they closed in that north end zone, it's even louder than it's ever been before. It's always been loud, but the north end zone enclosure has made it rise even louder.
And I think I saw, you know, people were obviously checking their Apple Watches. There were some pictures going around on social media. It's 117 to 120 decibels. I mean, me personally as a fan, you know, I went to Texas, you know, where there's 100,000 people in a stadium. That was the loudest, you know, the 80,000 that were there at Kenning, loudest I've ever heard in my life.
There's no prizes right now. We are bowl eligible. We're happy about that, but we don't get any prizes for being, you know, having 6 wins right now. And that's really what, just like I said, the season's long, games are long. It's what, you know, what you do the whole time.
6 down, 6 to go with all of them in Big Ten West play. First, Purdue. We talk the meaning of this matchup when Eye on the Hawks returns.
He's looking down the road, not behind him, and you know, he learns from things that happen out there. But he's a mentally tough guy, and that's where it all starts for that position.
Spencer Petras' first start for Iowa came against Purdue, a game the Hawkeyes lost 24-20. The then sophomore completed 22 of his 39 passes for 265 yards with no turnovers and a touchdown courtesy of a QB sneak. Iowa also lost its next game against Northwestern, but since then, Petras has quarterbacked the Hawkeyes to 12 straight wins, and over that span has thrown 17 touchdowns to just 4 interceptions.
You learn you can do it. You know, you can play in the Big Ten, and I can make plays at that level. You know, it's obviously I'm a lot happier with how I'm playing now than I was after that game, as you know I should be. Just if I'm doing my job and improving. But the only thing that's changed really is just time. You know, it's every week you work to get better and to improve, and if you do that over time, you know you'll see good results.
And one thing you can't question are those results. Now, Rob, you've watched Spencer, you've heard the criticism, you probably had some yourself, but going into his second game as the starter now against Purdue, how have you seen him grow as a quarterback?
I just think it's playing within himself like he talked about. He's calmed down more now, and Kirk Ferentz and Brian Ferentz have both talked about this. He gets himself a little wound up, and when he does that, his fundamentals break down, he makes poor decisions. I just think he kind of has an understanding, as we talked about early, of the complementary football. Take his shots when they're there, but don't make any stupid mistakes. I think we really saw it early in the season at Iowa State.
Yeah.
He was willing to take those sacks instead of make maybe questionable throws that would put his team, you know, behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
He understands the defense is good. He understands they've got Torrey Taylor.
Yeah.
He makes the plays when they're there, the makeables, but he's not going to force things. And I think that's great. He has a great understanding of what this team needs from him.
Now, whether it's happenstance or just bad luck, Purdue has had Iowa's number the past few seasons. Since Jeff Brom took over the program, the Boilermakers have won 3 of the last 4 meetings, with every game decided by 10 points or less. Even though they're heavy favorites this time around, Iowa expects a dogfight at Kinnick on Saturday.
I think every game's been a different story, but you know, common denominators, they've been, you know, they play hard and they play well. You know, as I alluded, the first thing you think about, and if you follow Jeff's career, I mean, they've always been really good offensively. So it starts there. They challenge you in a lot of different ways. They make you defend a lot of different things.
Now, for the second week in a row, Iowa is facing a team that's had its head-to-head edge over them the last few seasons. Rob, what is it about this Purdue team that has been the thorn in the Hawks' feathers?
It's interesting with Purdue. You look at matchups and how matchups are created. Jeff Brom is a offensive mind that's going to take shots.
Yeah.
He doesn't care. He may throw his quarterback may throw an interception. There may be incompletions down the field. He's going to keep taking those shots down the field. And when you've had Rondell Moore and David Bell, who we'll talk about later in the program, you know, guys that are on the outside that are so capable of making those plays, you can just continue to take those shots. And for whatever reasons, there have been some breakdowns in Iowa secondary through the years that have benefited.
They also have Milton, who's a really good wide receiver. I mean, and two good quarterbacks. We don't know who's starting yet, but two good quarterbacks that have been able to throw the ball and find those guys. And it's a dangerous offense, and they're an aggressive offense. Maybe that plays into Iowa, though, just a little bit more. Now, when the Iowa defense takes the field on Saturday, they'll be without starting cornerback Riley Moss. After he secured his nation-leading 4th interception versus Penn State, Moss dropped to the ground moments later and had to be helped off the field. Luckily, Moss should just miss Saturday's game. In the meantime, the Hawkeyes have full confidence in Terry Roberts, who steps up in his place.
He brings a sort of athleticism and speed and, experience that is really going to be tough that we're missing him. But Terry's done a great job in practice all year with the twos, and obviously he stepped in Penn State and did a great job. And so we're just as confident in him. But obviously Riley's a big loss.
I have the most confidence in all those guys. Whether it's it's Terry or someone else coming in, I think we have that next man mentality. And all those guys are really well coached. They're working hard in practice.
According to Pro Football Focus, Riley Moss is the 2nd highest graded corner in all of college football, just behind his own teammate Matt Hankins. Now, Rob, how big of a concern is this, if at all, and how do you think Terry will do against an aggressive passing attack?
I think the impact, the biggest impact here, Jett, is depth. We just talked about how good Purdue is at throwing the football, and you lose, such a dominant defensive back in Riley Moss. But I think Terry Roberts, there's not much, if any, drop-off from Riley Moss. I know people think that's crazy, but Terry Roberts would start on most teams in the country. Iowa's defensive backs are just that good. I think when you look at what Purdue likes to do, you want to have more defensive backs on the field. The thing that's positive for Iowa is they can go with a cash. Justin Jacobs is good in coverage. They have guys that can make up that difference for Riley Moss. I just think it hurts with depth. And if you have another injury, then where do you go?
David Bell's one of the best players, I think, that I've seen in quite some time. We certainly haven't had much luck defending him. He's playing at a real high level, once again, predictably there. So that's going to be a challenge for us.
Without Riley Moss, the Hawkeyes have a huge test with Purdue wide receiver David Bell coming to Kinnick. Grant Becker shows us how he's been a nightmare for Iowa and the rest of the Big Ten when Eye on the Hawks returns. For the 2nd straight week, the Hawkeyes have their hands full with a legit wide receiver 1 and one they know quite well. Grant Becker has a whole lot more in this week's Deep Dive.
Before Iowa launched its 12-game winning streak and vaulted itself to number 2 in the country behind arguably the nation's best secondary, the Hawkeye defense was looking questionable after getting torched by Purdue wideout David Bell. Last season's opener wasn't the first time the Indianapolis native had shredded this Hawkeye defense. In 2019 and 2020, Bell caught 13 passes against Iowa, combining for more than 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. As you might imagine, he gives the Hawks a headache.
We haven't done a good job in 2 years. I don't know. I haven't gone back. I don't want to depress myself and look at how many catches he's had in 2 years, but it's significant. And the guy we played last week is an outstanding player, and then the week before, I don't know where all these players are coming from, but we tried to get David, and we weren't successful, but at least we knew he was really good.
I'm not sure that's enough to console Hawkeye fans, but what matters now is how the Hawks handle Bell this time around, and they're hoping the 3rd time's a charm. Ferentz pointed out that Purdue has other weapons in the pass game, meaning double teams and dedicating all the attention to Bell simply creates a new problem. There's no special solution for a guy like David Bell. You just have to be at your best.
He's just a great pass catcher, great route runner. I mean, if the ball is in his area, he's probably going to come down with it. So we got to make sure that we're fighting through his hands, getting that ball out. But most importantly, just staying on top of him and limiting his big plays. I think, obviously they want to get him the ball. So we need to figure out which ways they're going to be trying to do that and the ways that we want to stop it.
If Iowa keeps Bell in check on Saturday, it will likely have just as much to do with the front 7 as it does with the coverage unit. Either way, it's another great test for this impressive Hawkeye defense.
Now, last week, Jahan Dotson did have 8 catches, but the Hawkeyes held him to just 48 yards. That's probably a dream scenario for Iowa when it also comes to David Bell. The question, though, Rob, can they do it?
Yeah, I think, like we talked about earlier, they're better equipped to be multiple on defense. And we saw, you look week 1, you've got Ty Freifogel for Indiana. Against Maryland, you have Demas. Granted, he got hurt early in that game.
Yeah.
Last week, Dotson. They've faced a lot of really good receivers. I know David Bell has given them problems in the past. What's 22 kids? The statistics are ridiculous, but I think they're better equipped now to handle somebody like him.
And I will say, expect another good game when it comes to interceptions, because again, the way Purdue throws the ball, they're going to want to fit some balls in there. They're going to want to throw some 50-50 shots, something Iowa's very, very good at. David Bell, a great wide receiver, but I just don't see Iowa giving him 3 touchdowns again in a game. Perhaps the biggest kept secret regarding the Purdue football program is their defense. The Boilermakers are the 3rd best in the Big Ten in both points and yards per game. And even though they've only had 2 interceptions on the year, Purdue features the conference's best pass defense in terms of yards and touchdowns.
It starts with that number 5, a defensive lineman, great player. Number 6, their field linebackers, a really great player. And their secondary is talented too. So they have players, they have good players that play hard. And I think that they just, again, it's one of those deals, they make you earn it down the field. There's going to be opportunity like every game, but, nothing's easy. We got to earn it because, they do have talented guys that play really hard.
That number 5 Peters mentioned off the top is George Karlaftis, projected by many to be a first-round draft pick. Now, when looking at this Purdue defense, Rob, what kind of pops off the page to you?
I thought it was interesting, Jett, in talking with Spencer Petras on Tuesday and asking him, new defensive coordinator, what's the look? It's different than what you've seen in the past. He said it looks more like Iowa's defense, more of a 4-3, very fundamentally sound, flow to the football, don't give up big plays, stop the run. Very similar to what Iowa's been doing.
Yeah.
And Karlaftis is as good a defensive player there is in this conference. I know he's not mentioned often and he's often forgot. He is a menace. You got to know where he is at all times because he can put a hurting on the quarterback.
Coming up next, we talk fake injuries and final predictions when Eye on the Hawks is back after this.
There were a couple guys that were down for the count, and then we're back a player or 2 later. And yeah, I mean, our fans aren't stupid. I mean, they're watching, they know what's going on. And I've been here 23 years. I think that's only the 2nd time we've seen that kind of stuff going on.
Now, you probably know better than me, Rob, but that other team Ferentz references is probably Michigan State in 2011. But man, that is a spicy statement, even by Kirk's standards. Rob, how did you see that situation on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm probably in the minority here. I'm not into booing players because you perceive that they're faking an injury. It was pretty pronounced on Saturday, but I have a hard time trying to predict which guy's really hurt, which guy's not hurt, and you're booing guys that are hurt. To me, there's other ways to maybe voice your displeasure or deal with it. To me, it left a bad taste in my mouth.
It's an interesting thing for me to see, especially a head coach to come out and say something like that. That to me is actually really surprising. I was actually kind of taken aback by Kirk Ferentz even coming out and kind of mentioning something like that. I mean, you love fans, you don't want to take them out of the game, but there are, I guess, times and places to boo, to cheer, and when someone's injured, it's just not the time and place. Now, we need to get off our soapbox before we get booed against Purdue. Well, it's officially prediction time. ESPN's Football Power Index gives the Hawkeyes an 82% chance to win, and Iowa opened as an 11.5-point favorite. This series has always stayed close, but Rob, what is your final prediction?
I think it's probably Iowa by a couple touchdowns. You look at this game, and I think one of the interesting statistics is with Purdue, they don't run the football well. Remember Xander Horvath last year gave Iowa fits. He's out now, unfortunately, with a broken leg. Purdue is averaging 2.8 yards per carry, on the season. There's no other Big Ten team averaging less than 3. They're dead last in running the football. If you can't have some type of balance on offense, I just don't see yourself having a chance against this Iowa defense.
Yeah, and I think you're right. This Iowa defense, I think, is going to be a menace on Saturday. I really do think that we almost probably approach 4 to 5 turnovers. You're almost kind of looking like a Maryland situation because they're going to have to force things down the field, and that plays right into Iowa's game. Now, that's going to be it for Week 7 of Eye on the Hawks. For all of us here, including Rob Howe, thank you for watching, and have a wonderful weekend.